Hey, at Loc-Doc Security, our mission is to help you protect your people and your property. And one of the ways that people ask about quite frequently is, well, I need high security.
Yes.
So today we're going to be answering that question. What is high security? And Kevin is here today. He's got some examples, I see, some more show and tell.
Props, more show and tell. Yes, absolutely.
So the question is, what is high security? What does that mean? And then also, how do I know if I need it?
Right. So today what we're going to be talking about in terms of high security is going to basically be pertaining to keys and cylinders and keeping things locked down. And we have, I've got 3 examples here. There's a couple different levels of security that you can go to. And then after we kind of go through each level, we can talk about what type of high security is best for you, your facility, and your needs.
Okay, now a question for you just to kind of get this off the ground. You said cylinders. What does that mean for me for my building? Where do these go?
So these are cylinders, and what these do is these go inside your locks, and this is actually what secures the door. This is the piece that the key works to actually unlock or open the door. The 3 examples I have here, these are Mortise cylinders, so these are going to be used in Mortise locks, or if you have a storefront door, it's going to be used in a dead latch type situation.
Gotcha.
But most commonly, you may see a key and lever, which is your typical cylindrical lock,
okay.
Or even a rim cylinder, which would be for your panic devices.
Okay, so there's a couple of different types, but these are just some general examples.
Correct, yes, general examples.
So what are the 3 types you have here?
Okay, so what we'll start out with is this is just your standard. This is no security whatsoever. This is just a standard Schlage key. It's pretty common. You can get them at the hardware store, Lowe's. So this is going to be your no security option. And this is probably the most common thing that you're going to find.
Okay.
Is just no security.
When you say no security, what does that mean?
When I say no security, that means like this is not a patented keyway. Okay, this is a very common keyway.
Okay.
So that means I could literally take this key to Lowe's, to a hardware store, or even the Minute Key kiosk at like Bed Bath & Beyond or something like that, and I can duplicate this key. Now, for a facility manager who's trying to control who has access to the building, this can be a huge problem because when I issue you this key, I have no way of knowing how many times you've copied it or if you've copied it.
So there's no protection against copies.
There's no protection against copies. So this is, like, again, this is no security or low security.
Okay, and it also would consider that really the ability to bypass or manipulate that lock to an open state.
Yes, so the other thing is, because again, this is a Schlage, just a standard Schlage, it's easily picked, and you can also make bump keys for it. So a bump key, for any of you that are not aware, is you basically take a key and you make all deep cuts, you put it in the cylinder and you just kind of give it a little light tap while you turn it, and a lot of times it can agitate the pins inside the cylinder and actually open up for you.
Okay, so no security means that you can get copies of keys easily and there's not a lot of protection against bypass.
Correct.
All right.
Absolutely.
Oh, what's next?
So next up, this is an offering from the Medico company, and this is their X4 solution. So this is kind of their mid-grade or middle-level security. Now what this brings into it is this is a patented keyway. So basically what that means is this, I know it's hard to see here, but the profile of the key is patented.
Okay.
And that means, like, I couldn't take this to a hardware store or even a locksmith shop unless it was the locksmith that provided this key to me. They're not going to be able to duplicate it. They're not going to be able to get their hands on the blanks.
So when you say patented, means that the company that manufactures it, Medico, actually controls who can purchase copies of those blanks.
Correct, yes. And in our sense, like, we have our own patented keyway that belongs to us that no other locksmith around us has. So that protects, if you get a key from us, you have to come back. You have to come back to us to get it. Now, again, going back to if you're a facility manager and you're trying to track who has keys and you want to make sure you get them back, this is your first step right here. Again, because you have to go to a specific, again, your dealer to get the copy of this key. You're going to know if it's been duplicated or not, because one other part of Medico's program, to be an MSC, which we are, you have to provide audits on all of the keys that you do. So anytime anybody comes into our office with an X4 or an M3 or M4 key, which we'll talk about in a second, we're going to look in our system and say, are you an authorized user? Are you allowed to duplicate this key? If you're not, we're going to go through the proper channels to make sure that whoever the system admin is notified.
So the part of that is it's centralizing who can make copies of a key or generate new keys.
Correct.
Based off of centralizing who has kind of control over that.
Correct. And again, it's all based off of this key blank. It's all based off this patented key blank. Now, as far as like we talked about with the Schlage here, with the bump and the pick, it is slightly more resistant, but it can still be bumped and picked.
It still can be manipulated.
It still can be manipulated. It's not as easy as the Schlage or a standard, but it still can be done. Essentially with the X4, this is going to provide, their main thing there is key control. We're trying to just really, get a really good rein on who has the keys and just try to make sure that someone doesn't get copies that that's not supposed to.
Okay. And then the third option that you have.
The third option, this is your high security option. And this is, again, another product by Medico. This is their brand. This came out earlier this year. This is their brand new M4 technology.
Okay.
So what the M4 technology does is it builds upon the X4 and the fact that it's also a patented keyway. Again, so this is dealer specific. So this is going to help you with your key control. But the main additions or changes to the M4 above the X4 is the fact that now we're adding they're sidebars. So there are these additional cuts in the side, as well as angled cuts along the key here that make it much, much, much harder to pick. So this is going to bring in your pick protection. So and as far as to my knowledge, I know there's a bounty out on it, and no one has been able to claim it yet because no one's been able to pick it. But these angled cuts and these sidebars basically make it to where you cannot pick the lock.
And so that brings in the high security side, and there's some UL listings, and we won't dive into all of that, but there's some UL listings on some very high level parameters of the manipulation or the bypass methods to get through that particular lock, and that's where it's meeting all those.
Correct.
And kind of, if I'm understanding you correctly, there are multiple components inside of that particular lock that all have to kind of engage with each other in order for it to rotate. Where on the first example that you have here with the kind of the standard basic, there's only one.
Right. It's just so you can see it kind of. Actually, I'll use it right here, kind of across the top. So these are your pins across the top here.
Yep.
And this is in kind of our standard. This is all you have to line up.
Sure.
You just have to get those pins lined up. Same thing with the X4. If you can get those pins lined up and the tumblers just right, you can get the cylinder to turn. With the M4. You're having to get these lined up as well as the sidebar here. Inside this cylinder, there's a sidebar, which you can see on the key here. All these, smaller pins and side cuts there. You have to get those to line up in addition to the ones across the top. So even if you were to get the sidebars to line up, your chances of getting the top pins to line up are very slim. Especially with angled cuts. It's going to be very, very difficult to get.
So just a lot of variables inside of there that really are going to take a lot of work to do and to manipulate. There's also hardened pins in there to make sure that it is drill resistant for a certain amount of time. So a lot of parameters are going to help it to be that high security. And then on top of that as well, the key control that you were talking about.
Right, the key control. And, kind of touching on what you just said now about drilling, we've talked about picking, drilling is another very real threat to security. A standard cylinder, a lot of it's brass, none of it's hardened steel. It's going to be fairly easy to drill. Getting up to the X4, again, not really drill resistant. Materials are a little better, but they're not hardened. When you get into your high security, with the pick protection, then you're starting to get in kind of your hardened steel, so it's going to be harder to drill. There are reinforcements all the way around where the key goes around the cylinder there. So you've got hardened points here so that it's going to be harder to drill, much better construction. Again, nothing is really drill proof.
Correct.
It's just, like we talked about the UL listings, they basically are saying, hey, with a prolonged attack over an X number of minutes, this cylinder is going to resist that. Yep.
So that is some very good education on what is high security, how is it applicable, where would it be useful, and really the progression there of this is a lock and a key, and I don't really care if anybody gets a copy of it because there's nothing that is behind that I'm really concerned about. I want to kind of keep an eyeball on who can get copies of keys, and then So the third is I want to make sure that this can't be bypassed without my knowledge, and I also want to know who has copies of the key.
Correct, yes.
All right. Well, very cool. If you'd like to find out more, you can read some additional information listed below, or you can click the link to contact us. We'll be happy to connect with you and give you more information on this, find out if your facility is right for this type of a solution, and explain to you exactly the process to get that in place for you and your property. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Kevin, for the information.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll see you next time.